Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 2 basically of target tendinali. So we were on chapter number 94, that is urologic stone disease. Last we did about the diagnosis and imaging, right? We also went through this thing table in the chapter. So we'll be going through all the tables essentially. I'll be just opening up the PDF and then we can just go through the table. If you want, you can take screenshots along with it. I am planning to finish off this chapter in this video. So as planned, we can have 2 videos each for each chapter, right? So this is going to be the part 2. As discussed, we've already gone through the pathophysiology and imaging, right? So now the next topic, according to Tendinalis, is going to be clinical features, right? So clinical features, we all know. If you are working in emergency, then you always know a patient. You will see that the patient is putting his hand on his flank and makes a very painful face, grimacing that I'm in pain. Unless and until it's a female patient and you're suspecting ectopic and etc., you almost always know that it's a flank pain and it's a ureteric, stone renal colic, which we call. So clinical feature is acute onset. This is according to the lines of Tendinalis. Acute onset crampy intermittent pain. So see, what you will be seeing is, you can ask that did you have a history of kidney stone earlier, or do you recognize this pain? Most patients that I've come across will come and tell, it's my kidney stone pain. I realize, I know this, I'm familiar with this pain, please give me some painkiller first. I've already had this stone once in the past, right? Sometimes patient will tell you that I'm having difficulty in passing urine. Sometimes patients will tell you that I'm going again and again, like I need to use the washroom again and again, very quickly, very frequently. This pain is radiating towards the groin. They'll almost always tell you. I also had a patient once who presented with groin pain, and we suspected testicular torsion. Because he didn't have an earlier history of kidney stone, we always tend to ask whether you have had this pain before or is there any family history. But then this guy, he was 19-year-old male, he was playing cricket, then he came home, he slept, and then he had this sudden onset groin pain, like scrotal pain, left side scrotal pain. What we missed was that we didn't ask about the urinary complaints. So what happened was, in that very much urgency, we ordered a scrotal Doppler, which was perfectly fine. But then our radiologist team, they tend to also look at the ureter and the bladder. So they saw that there was hydroureteronephrosis of the left side. So then we converted that scrotal Doppler to ultrasound whole abdomen, KUB basically. And that's how we found out that okay, it was actually a stone pain, a ureteric colic actually. So we also have to ask about the urinary complaints. Pain radiates. Then it is a visceral pain, so it is very poorly localized. They won't be able to tell. They may have some signs, like they may have tenderness. Mostly they do not. They tell that the pain tends to come from within. They may have tenderness, they may have rebound tenderness, okay? They may have, like, it's very common, it may happen, right? Then they may have guarding rigidity and all those abdominal signs. Guarding rigidity. And then nausea, vomiting, very important. Yes, patient will always tell that I'm feeling like I'm about to throw up. So nausea and vomiting is very important symptom, accompanied with ureteric colic. Also they may have tachy or brady, anything can be there. Sometimes I have observed that there has been a brady, like heart rate is around 55-60, but sometimes there is also tachy, so it is not an absolute sign, right? Then they may also have diaphoresis, they may be sweating. That is all about the clinical features. Hematuria, yes, it is very important that according to Tendinalis, up to 85% of patients may present with hematuria, right? Now location of pain somewhat correlates with the location of the stone also. So if upper ureter, like, okay, let's make a diagram now, like this is the ureter, right? So if it is in the upper ureter, then it is a flank pain, which we all know. Then if it is in the mid ureter, then it will be lower anterior quadrant. If it is in the distal ureter, then this will go to the groin. And if it is in the VUJ, like somewhere here only, then this mimics UTI, the urinary complaints which we were talking about. So urinary complaints, increased frequency, dribbling of urine, urgency, pain during passing urine, dysuria, that is all. Now, sometimes what happens is ESWL. Do you know what is this? Shockwave lithotripsy. So, when there is a large stone, urologists tend to do ESWL. Post ESWL, what happens is a large stone is broken down into many small stones. Now, what happens is these small stones will pass down through the ureter. So, when they pass down, they form a line, which we all know. I forgot the name. But these fragments, if some of them are large, then it can also cause renal colic. So we also need to ask that, did you undergo any procedure related to, stone? They'll be telling you. Usually patients tell by themselves that I had a stone and then I had a procedure and now the pain is again coming. So what do I do? That is how it is, because the sludge that passes down, there are some few, large fragments which may cause this pain. Now, risk factors for poor outcome. There is a table. Let's look into the table first. Oh, I don't know how to. Oh God. How do I? Okay, just a second. Okay. So yeah, risk factors for poor outcome. See, if the kidney is a problem, right? So if the kidney is a problem, that means what? Patient is having diabetes, hypertension, renal insufficiency, single kidney, horseshoe kidney, or post-renal transplant. These patients, they are independent risk factors for poor outcome, which means what? That if there is stone, then the possibility of spontaneous passage of stone or not affecting the kidney is very low. Like it will affect the kidney, it might cause some problems, right? History of difficulty with stones. So if there have been extractions earlier, if DJ stent and all has been placed earlier, ureterostomy tubes have been placed, or the patient has already undergone lithotripsy, these patients will have poor outcome, which means poor outcome means that there is less probability of spontaneous passage of stone. Some urological intervention will be needed. Then if there are symptoms of infection are usually with Staghorn calculus, I told you, right? So there can be fever, hypotension, some systemic illness which is going on, or some concurrent UTI, right? Now let's look into this also once and for all. We'll be just done with this. So what are the DDs if a patient comes with flank pain or groin pain, nausea, vomiting, difficulty, dysuria, etc., plus minus all of these symptoms, right? So vascular, the most important ones which we need to know are aortic dissection, aortic aneurysm, renal artery and vein, like artery embolism, venous thrombosis, and mesenteric ischemia. We have to keep in mind about all these 5. Of course, all these symptoms will be slightly different. Aortic dissection and aneurysm, the pain character will be somewhat different. The pain score will be different, radiation towards back. And BP, like vitals, we also have to monitor vitals. There can be low BP, there can be high BP. So we have to look into all these things also. Then renal, there can be pyelonephritis, papillary necrosis, renal cell carcinoma, renal infarct, renal hemorrhage. So we also have to take in account about hematuria. If it is a frank hematuria, a lot of blood is coming, then of course we can go towards RCC and renal hemorrhage. If the patient has pus, like frothy urine is, not frothy actually, the patient will be telling very turbid, thick urine is coming, history of fever, flank pain plus, bilateral flank pain sometimes, history of pyelonephritis, all these things we have to ask. Ureter, blood clot, stricture, tumor. See, out of these, I have seen stricture very commonly. what happens is that there is a stricture and that will cause some kind of pain, and that will be mistaken for ureteric, stone. Then for bladder, there can be tumor or cystitis, UTI. In UTI, there is cystitis. So this may be mistaken. So what do we do for this? We do ultrasound. Very, very easy, very, very handy. GIT. So it can be biliary colic. Very, very important. I also like gallbladder cholelithiasis. It may present as right-sided flank pain. Pancreatitis, very commonly. Perforated peptic ulcer. This is an important DD which we need to understand. Appendicitis, rare. Inguinal hernia, diverticulitis, cancer, bowel obstruction. All that you can think of can present as a, mimic. Then gynecologic, I told you in the beginning also, if it is a female patient, please rule out ectopic pregnancy and PID and ovarian torsion at the first instant. Ovarian cyst and endometriosis are not very much, not very, very emergent conditions, but yeah, these also need to be taken care of. But ectopic pregnancy and ovarian torsion are two things which we need to rule out before anything else. That is why mostly it is written that get an NCCT KUB done. But I personally think that if you have ultrasound, it helps you to rule out a lot of things. Like it will tell you about free fluid in pouch of Douglas. It will tell you about any stone, any clot, cystitis. Features of cystitis is very easily appreciated, and most importantly, it is easily reported because when the just personally talking about our hospital, when the radiologist is doing the ultrasound, if there is any critical finding, alarming finding, striking finding, sir will call up and tell us in the emergency that, see, Dr. Vidushi, this patient is having these findings. What is the history? And when we tell about the history, it becomes very much easy, because for CT and all, reporting takes slight more time in our hospital. Then GU, genitourinary, testicular torsion, I just told you right now. Then epididymitis. Others, drug-seeking behavior. If a patient who is, opioid dependent and knows that if you go by this flank pain and you will get tramadol and Nalfie and all, then maybe shingles may be there, and retroperitoneal hematoma abscess tumor. For this, you need to go get a VBG done, see about the hemoglobin. Abscess and tumor takes some time to get diagnosed. So this is how it is. Now let's talk about the ancillary tests in urologic stone disease. Let's just finish off with these three tables all at once. See, there are three things: X-ray, ultrasound, CT. X-ray, which earlier was done, that was X-ray abdomen, right? Plain abdominal radiograph, what is written here. Sensitivity is very poor, specificity is okayish. Advantage is that it can be used to follow the stones. Like if you first got a CT abdomen done and you were able to see the stone, now what you do, whenever patient comes again, you can get another X-ray done, and then you can see again that, okay, the stone has passed till here, the stone has passed there. So you can only track the stone, right? But poor sensitivity and specificity, small size stone will definitely get missed out, right? Then let's talk about ultrasound, which is most used, most frequently done in our setting. Sensitivity is okay, specificity is very nice. Then advantages, pregnancy, most important, right? Then RCM is media, like contrast, so it is not nephrotoxic, no radiation, no side effects. But disadvantage is that middle third of the ureter is mostly obscured by the colon. So what happens is that if there is a stone in the middle third of the ureter, it is usually missed, and it may also miss smaller stones. Less than 5 mm of stones are usually missed. So usually we get reporting as left side hydroureteronephrosis, CT for further correlation, right? Now let's talk about non-contrast CT. Very nice sensitivity, very nice specificity. Problem is that radiation, most important, and there is no evaluation of renal function. So these two things are the disadvantages, but it is very good. Just the problem is that radiation. So in pregnant females and in children, especially when we want to avoid radiation exposure, then NCCT is, second step, and ultrasound takes over. Then it also detects other diagnosis, of course. It helps us to diagnose so many other things. But still, CT is, and it is also expensive here. If you look at the charges for CT and ultrasound, it's like almost 3 times, I think. Even more maybe, I don't know. So yeah, CT is expensive also. So these were the 3 tables which we have seen. Then Risk factors, yeah, I've told you. Yeah, there is one line in Tintinales which says that nephrolithiasis, just remember this line, it is important, right? So nephrolithiasis is the most common misdiagnosis with rupturing, very very important, right? With rupturing or expanding abdominal aneurysm. Abdominal aneurysm. So whenever you have a flank pain, please never ever rule out abdominal aorta aneurysm. Please take this into account because it is the most common misdiagnosis, and if it is written in books, definitely most of us, like people of our age, doctors of our age, have misdiagnosed it in the past. That is why it has come into books also. So see, it is such a blunder if you actually diagnose with nephrolithiasis and you forget to think towards this abdominal aorta. Now see, if a patient has come with flank pain, just telling you, if a patient is more than 60-year-old, the patient is a male, the patient is coming with flank pain, and you ask, Uncle ji, did you have this pain earlier also? Uncle says, no, there is no history of prior stones, and the BP is slightly also low. I'm not saying grossly low. Even if the BP is slightly low, always think about aortic aneurysm. Always think about aortic aneurysm. Like it is written in the book, males with more than 60 years of age never ever present with ureteric colic without prior history of stones. If a patient already had history of stone, like a patient is on indinavir, acyclovir, something like that, he has frequent flank pains, then okay. But if patient has no history of stone, flank pain, and even if the BP is transiently low, then also you have to first suspect aortic aneurysm and not ureteric colic. Okay. Now, renal artery thrombosis, I've told you. Patient is pregnant, consider ectopic. Diagnosis. So diagnosis, you have to see KFT. I told you that if it is an acute episode, it will be normal. Ultrasound might miss stones which are less than 5 mm, but will tell you about hydroureteronephrosis. CT is the best, but radiation exposure, etc. Labs, we can go for, apart from KFT, you can go for urine RM. Why? Because UTI may be there, so pus cells and all culture for sensitivity of the organism, right? Then hematuria can be a finding, clinical finding, but it should not be frank hematuria, like, too much. Then we've seen a lot of it. Okay, hematuria definition is more than 3 RBC per high power field. Okay. I told you that more than 85% of patients will present with hematuria. KFT I have told you already. Now I have also told about imaging. Okay, IV urography is not useful. Told you about all of this. This is all that we have seen. Okay. There is one small thing that is mentioned, and I think it should be known by us. What we do in our ER usually is that whenever a patient with flank pain comes and there is a waiting in ultrasound, so let's say that during nights what happens is that ultrasound machine we have, right, but the radiologist is only one. So at night what happens is if a patient gets sick in ICUs or in transplant ICUs, what happens is the radiologist is busy over there. They go for portable ultrasound, right, bedside ultrasound. What happens is whenever we call in the radiology room that we have a patient with flank pain and we want to get a USG done, they'll tell you that no, we have a waiting period of 30 minutes right now. Sir is there outside for portable. He'll be coming back in 30 minutes. What we tend to do is that we will rush 500 ml fluid. We tend to give a bolus fluid, right? Especially in young patients, we tend to rush fluid. And what we do is that we think that maybe if it is a smaller stone, it may pass out. And if the bladder is not full, it may get full, so it becomes easy for the study to be done, right? So with that intention, sometimes what we do is that we rush fluid. Whenever we give forced IV hydration, first of all, there is no relief in pain or nausea. There is no relief, right? Second, there is no difference in passage of stone. It is clearly written that there is no difference in pain control or stone passage rates when compared to minimal IV hydration. Okay, so forced diuresis is different and forced IV hydration is different. So what we do in ER is forced IV hydration. What we do is we give a lot of fluid, but that does not increase the rate of urine formation, right? Then what I wanted to say was that when ultrasound machine comes back, when sir will come back and he will say, okay, send the patient for ultrasound, we will send, patient will tell that, oh, it will be reported as hydrouretronephrosis. Most of the time it is a false positive hydrouretronephrosis because of bolus, crystalloid bolus. Because of crystalloid bolus, there can be false positive hydrouretronephrosis. That is why we should not rush. We should not give bolus fluid to the patient. We should give minimal IV hydration, right? As much as needed. Now, let's talk about the treatment. So see, what will you do? Patient has come jumping with pain. You will first give pain management. What do you do? First of all, NSAIDs. Let's talk about NSAIDs. If the kidney function is not, deranged, it is a young patient, does not have any allergy history, drug allergy, etc. NSAIDs are very good. Why? Because they have direct action on ureter. They inhibit prostaglandin synthesis. So it is a very good thing. But if patient has history of aspirin hypersensitivity, coagulopathy, renal impairment, elderly patients, you must avoid NSAIDs. But if it is a young male patient coming, no histories actually, and it is absolutely safe, then you should give this first. Very good pain control, very fast pain control, and for a very quite long time. For pain and nausea, you give MSET, ondansetron, etc. Opioids are very, very frequently used. We give tramadol. So, tramadol is an opioid, but it is used very, very frequently, and 100 mg is what we tend to give. If patient is not relieved by this, we can go to a higher opioid, which is nalbuphine. But I think that mostly patients are, relieved by tramadol itself. So this is about it. In Tintinales, it is mentioned that if you want to give, you can give lidocaine also. Lidocaine IV. 1.5 mg per kg IV. It is said that the pain relief is sooner than morphine. Like if you give morphine to a patient and if you give lidocaine to a patient who has been given lidocaine will show pain relief sooner than patient who has been given morphine. It is a very surprising thing, but we don't use lidocaine, right? Because there are so many, I don't know why it is not being used very confidently. I asked my senior anesthetist, sir, he told that because of risk of arrhythmias and lesser study towards ureteric colic, it is not being used. And when we already have NSAIDs and then we have tramadol and 99% of patients are relieved by these two, then what is the need to try new things which we already know are different and difficult and might cause complications? Because a patient coming just for flank pain, just for kidney stone, ureteric stone, and gets an arrhythmia or something like that, that is very risky. We don't want that for such a small thing. So that is it. Now let's talk about UTI. This topic is finished. Now in this chapter, the second topic is UTI. UTI is urinary tract infection. So see, if patient has stone plus patient has fever plus patient has some kind of signs of infection, Sign of infection means tachy, temperature, hypotension. You know all of this, right? If all of these three criterias are met, you have to admit the patient. You do not discharge the patient, you admit the patient, right? What are the antibiotics? So antibiotics should be ones which covers gram-negative bacilli, right? So they have given three, drugs. I'll write it here. First is ciprofloxacin, 500 BD, 10 to 14 days. Second, what you can give, levoflox, 500 OD, 10 to 14 days. Third, cefpodoxime, 200 BD, 10 to 14 days. This is OPD, discharge for patients who do not have these things, right? They do not have tachy, temperature or hypotension. They have, signs of UTI like frequency, urgency, burning, micturations, fever with chills, history since 2 days. But the patient is vitally stable, a ward patient, an OPD patient, right? For such patients, you can give these drugs. But if you see that the patient is sick, the heart rate is more, tachy, 130, 140 heart rate, temperature is 102, 103, patient is in pain, patient is in fever, patient's BP is like 90 by 60 or something like that, then you will have to admit the patient, right? There is a table for indications of admission. I'll just go through it once. What is this? I don't know how to use this. I will learn soon. So there is a table. See, this is the stone. See, this is CT, right? This is not an X-ray. We can see the stone over here. You can see the stone over here. Then, God, how does this? I do not understand how to use this. See, this is the one. This is the left side, right? You do understand, na, mirror work. So the right and left. And the bladder is visible, right? This is the bladder. So this is the vesico-ureteric junction, and you can actually measure. So it is written that at the left vesico-ureteric junction it is there, right? Then just a second. Yeah, this is indication for admission. See, these are the indication for admission for a patient with nephrolithiasis. Absolute indication, relative indication. Absolute indication is intractable pain or vomiting. You've given an PAN, MSET, you've given an NSAID, Tyclo, then you've given Tramadol, now you're planning to give Nalfi. Patient is still puking, patient is vomiting, patient is unable to get control of his or her pain. You have to admit. Urosepsis. Urosepsis is, you will understand urosepsis, like patient is altered, patient is having, some electrolyte abnormality in VBG, mostly you'll see hyponatremia, and then you will see that the BP is low, patient is, fever is there, it has been since 4 or 5 days, patient is diabetic, patient is immunocompromised, patient has indwelling folies, there are many things that you will see that no, this patient will get sick if patient is being discharged, so you'll admit the patient. Patient has a single kidney, patient has a transplanted kidney with obstruction, patient is an AKI, hypercalcemic crisis because it will form so many stones. So you have to admit the patient, give boluses of fluid so that it doesn't form stone and it comes out. Severe medical comorbidities, patient has diabetic, patient is hypertensive, patient has BPH, patient is having fever, lot of things. Advanced age. Okay, these are the absolute indication for admission. Now let's talk about relative indication. If patient has fever, but it is a young patient, you know that the fever will eventually subside with paracetamol, discharge. Solitary kidney, transplanted kidney, but there is no obstruction. This time you can discharge. Obstructing stone with signs of UTI. So you know that there is the stone and there is UTI. You can correct both of them if it is a small stone then. Urinary extravasation. This is relative indication. Medical comorbidities, you have to see. Stone is unlikely to pass. Large stone above the pelvic brim, something like this. Then you should think towards admission. That okay, let's admit. Let's see. Okay. So this is about it. Now let's go towards medical expulsion therapy. We all know what happens in medical expulsion therapy. tamsulosin is used. Oh, एक second. Tamsulosin. Tamsulosin is used. What is tamsulosin? Tamsulosin is an alpha blocker. How much is it given? 0.4 mg HS. Mostly at bedtime it is given. I do not know why. Shorter stone expulsion time. It is more effective if the stone is more than 5 mm. Then it is more effective. But the side effects are, that is why it is given at night. Because the side effect is hypotension. If the patient is sleeping, then postural hypotension, syncope and all those complaints will be lesser. Side effect is lightheadedness, dizziness, headache, etc. Okay, if you do not want to give tamsulosin, then what can you give? You can give terazosin, 5 to 10 mg OD, or you can give doxazosin. This is 4 mg OD. We do not give calcium channel blocker. It is not recommended. Okay. Now, disposition and follow-up. If it is a small stone, discharge with tamsulosin, Urimax. Small stone, discharge, give them a strainer. We never give. Strainer is what? Strainer is a channi to collect the stones. Then, what is the time for passage of stone? Passage of stone time is 7 to 30 days. Okay, for 5 to 6 mm of stone. And ask the patient to follow up in OPD after 7 days. After 7 days. Consult a urologist if you are feeling that no, I need to talk. If there is negative imaging and just hematuria, if the patient has hematuria, frank nahi hai, it is not frank, it is just slight hematuria, mild hematuria, plus you undergo ultrasound and CT, KUB, and it is inconclusive, which means that there is no diagnosis, then you mostly think towards UTI. This time you discharge the patient, ask the patient to come back again in the urology OPD and get yourself diagnosed, right? Now, special considerations. There's a small paragraph. See, if a pregnant female comes to you with flank pain and you see that in ultrasound there is hydroureteronephrosis, it is mostly physiological. Think about something else. Okay. NSAIDs are not recommended. NSAIDs are not recommended for such patients. Let's see what is written. In my notes I've written just this much. Let me see what is written here. Yes. With regard to treatment of pregnant, can you see? Treatment of pregnant patient, NSAIDs are not recommended. So narcotic pain control is most commonly used. Okay. Then what can be given for medical expulsion therapy? We used to give tamsulosin 0.4 HS. But here, and I also told you that calcium channel blocker is not recommended. But for pregnant patients, we give nifedipine, which is known to be safe in pregnancy. It has been recommended for medical expulsive therapy in pregnant patients, right? Alpha blockers are category C, safety is unknown, which means tamsulosins we cannot give, right? So this chapter is now finished, over. I'll just see what is the next chapter. I don't remember. I've read, quite a few chapters. So let's see what comes next. So we'll meet in the next class. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next class then. Goodbye.